What happens when one of the world's most powerful CEOs trades his suit for a factory uniform? When Elon Musk, the visionary force behind Tesla, made that decision, it wasn't part of a media stunt or a calculated PR move. It was something far more personal, something raw. And no one, not his top executives, not the employees on the factory floor, and certainly not the world watching from afar, could have predicted what was about to unfold. It started on an ordinary morning, one that should have been filled with routine emails and board meetings. But as Elon Musk stood in front of his mirror in his Los Angeles home, staring at his reflection, he felt the weight of something he couldn't shake. His usual casual demeanor, the hoodie he often wore with a kind of nonchalant confidence, was set aside. Instead, he reached for something far less familiar, a simple navy blue factory uniform. The fabric felt stiff against his skin, alien compared to the soft materials he was used to. He picked up a pair of safety goggles, awkwardly balancing them on his nose, and grabbed a lunchbox, something he hadn't carried since his school days in South Africa. He let out a soft chuckle, but it didn't reach his eyes. This wasn't a game. It wasn't about appearances. It was about something deeper. "I need to know what they see, what they feel," he muttered under his breath, his voice barely above a whisper. As he pulled on steel-toed boots, heavy and unfamiliar, he could hear the muffled voices of his assistants in the next room, debating the logistics of his plan. "It's a security risk," one of them said urgently. "The press could get wind of this. It could blow up," another argued. But none of that mattered to Elon. This wasn't about the media or shareholders. This was about understanding the heart of his company, and there was only one way to do that: by walking in the shoes of the people who built his dream. Later that morning, slipping into the crowd at the Tesla Gigafactory in Reno, Nevada, was surprisingly easy. The factory buzzed with life as hundreds of workers filed in, their footsteps echoing in the vast metal corridors. The smell of oil and metal hung heavy in the air, mixing with the faint scent of coffee from thermoses clutched in tired hands. Elon felt a strange pang in his chest as he watched them. Some faces worn with exhaustion, others sharing quiet laughter, finding camaraderie in the grind of the workday. No one gave him a second glance as he joined the line, heading toward the main floor. For the first time in years, Elon Musk wasn't the center of attention. He was just another face in the crowd. Inside, the factory was a living organism, a symphony of human effort and machine precision. Conveyor belts hummed steadily, robotic arms moved with flawless coordination, and workers darted between stations, their movements sharp and practiced. The air was filled with the clatter of metal against metal, the occasional hiss of machinery, and the steady rhythm of work boots on concrete. Elon took it all in, his sharp mind absorbing every detail, but it wasn't just the machines he was interested in. It was the people, their stories, their struggles, their triumphs, all hidden behind tired eyes and calloused hands. His cover story was simple. He was Dan, a mid-career technician transferring from a smaller plant in Arizona. With a little coaching and a lot of caution, he managed to keep his real identity hidden as he moved toward his assigned station. His heart raced, not from fear but from something else entirely: excitement. For the first time in years, Elon Musk was just another cog in the machine. "All right, Dan," barked his supervisor, a wiry man with a sharp gaze named Mike. His voice cut through the noise like a whip. "We don't have time for slow starts. Get over here and shadow James. He'll show you the ropes." James, a lean man in his mid-30s with quick eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, gave Elon a brisk nod. "New guy? Hope you're ready. This isn't exactly a cakewalk." His tone wasn't unkind, but it wasn't friendly either. It was the voice of someone who'd seen too many fresh faces come and go, leaving behind nothing but extra work for the rest of the team. Elon smiled faintly, masking the flutter of nerves in his chest. "I'll do my best." And with that, he stepped into a world he thought he understood, but was about to realize he barely knew it all. The first day had been a blur of sweat, aching muscles, and the constant hum of machinery. Elon Musk, now simply Dan, had managed to blend in, but as he walked into the Tesla Gigafactory for his second day, a strange mix of anticipation and dread settled in his chest. The novelty of his undercover mission was beginning to wear off, replaced by the harsh reality of the grueling work that awaited him. The morning air inside the factory felt heavy, tinged with the metallic scent of oil and the faint undertone of exhaustion that clung to the walls. Elon tightened his grip on his lunchbox, feeling the weight of what he had learned in just one day. These workers weren't just employees. They were people carrying stories, struggles, and dreams. And the cracks in Tesla's polished image were starting to show. As he approached the assembly line, James greeted him with a nod, tossing a pair of work gloves in his direction. "You're on the line today," he said, his voice rough from years of shouting over the noise. "Bolts on the chassis. One every 3 seconds. No time for hesitation." Elon slipped the gloves on, feeling the coarse fabric against his already sore hands. The instructions seemed simple enough, but as the conveyor belt roared to life, he quickly realized just how deceptive simplicity could be. The line moved faster than he anticipated, a blur of metal and motion. The first chassis rolled toward him, and Elon fumbled, the bolt slipping from his fingers as the frame moved out of reach. A wave of frustration surged through him. He wasn't used to failing, not like this. "Eat up, huh?" James shouted from across the line, his voice cutting through the clamor. "You're holding us all back." The words stung more than Elon expected. He wasn't just failing himself. He was slowing down the entire team. The pressure was unlike anything he'd experienced in the boardroom, where decisions were made from a distance, with data and projections. Here, every mistake had immediate consequences, and there was no hiding from them. As the hours ticked by, Elon's muscles burned with fatigue. Sweat trickled down his face, stinging his eyes as he struggled to keep pace. But the physical strain was only part of it. What weighed on him even more were the conversations buzzing around him, snippets of frustration, whispered complaints, and the occasional burst of dark humor. "Did you hear about the new software update?" A worker muttered nearby, his voice laced with irritation. "It's messing with the robots again." "Yeah," another replied with a dry laugh. "And guess who's staying late to fix it?" Elon listened carefully, absorbing every word. These weren't just offhand comments. They were windows into a deeper problem. The workers were navigating a landscape riddled with inefficiencies, technical failures, and management blind spots. And beneath the camaraderie was a quiet, simmering frustration that no corporate report could capture. By lunchtime, Elon's body felt like it had been run through a gauntlet. His muscles ached with every step as he made his way to the break room, the fluorescent lights casting a harsh glare on the tired faces gathered around tables and vending machines. He found an empty seat in the corner, sinking into the plastic chair with a sigh of relief. As he unwrapped his sandwich, he let his eyes drift across the room. Groups of workers huddled together, sharing stories and jokes in hushed tones. But amidst the laughter, Elon caught the edges of more serious conversations. "Third accident this month," someone whispered grimly, their voice barely audible over the hum of the soda machine. "If they don't fix that lift soon, someone's going to get seriously hurt." The words hit Elon like a punch to the gut. He had come here expecting to find inefficiencies, maybe even some dissatisfaction. But what he was uncovering went deeper than that. This wasn't just about productivity. It was about people's lives, their safety, their dignity. He stared down at his lunch, suddenly losing his appetite. How had things gotten this bad? He wondered, a knot tightening in his chest. How had he, of all people, missed this? Later that day, Elon witnessed firsthand just how fragile the system truly was. The rhythmic flow of the assembly line came to an abrupt halt when one of the robotic arms sputtered and froze mid-motion. The sudden screech of alarms echoed through the factory, sending a ripple of tension across the floor. Supervisors rushed to contain the chaos, barking orders over the din. James cursed under his breath, grabbing a toolkit and hurrying toward the malfunctioning machine. "This thing's been acting up for weeks," he muttered, frustration etched into every word. "But fixing it properly takes time we don't have." Without thinking, Elon stepped forward. "I can help," he offered, his voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through his veins. His years of engineering expertise finally had a chance to surface in a meaningful way. James shot him a skeptical glance, but didn't argue. Suit yourself. Just don't slow me down. Together, they worked in tense silence, their hands moving swiftly over the tangled machinery. Elon's mind raced as he diagnosed the problem, his fingers tightening bolts and adjusting components with practiced precision. But despite their efforts, nearly an hour of production was lost before the robotic arm sputtered back to life. As the line resumed its relentless pace, Elon felt the weight of the workers' glares. They weren't just frustrated by the delay. They were exhausted, overworked, and operating in a system that seemed to value efficiency over everything else. By the end of the day, Elon's body felt like it had been pushed to the brink, but it was the emotional toll that left the deepest mark. The tension in the factory was palpable, a constant undercurrent that no amount of innovation could mask. As he trudged back to his temporary apartment that evening, Elon couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental was missing from Tesla's DNA. The company had been built on a foundation of groundbreaking technology and bold visions, but somewhere along the way, it had lost sight of the people who brought those visions to life. That night, as he sat alone in the dim light of his small kitchen, Elon stared at the calluses forming on his hands. He had come here looking for answers, but all he had found were more questions. How do you fix a system that's broken from the inside? He wondered, his mind racing with possibilities. How do you balance progress with humanity? The next day, he would return to the factory floor, armed with a new perspective and a growing determination. He hadn't come this far just to observe. He was here to understand. And understanding, he realized, was the first step toward change. By the third day, the sharp sting of exhaustion had settled into a dull, persistent ache in Elon Musk's muscles. His hands, once accustomed to the smooth touch of conference tables and sleek prototypes, now bore the raw calluses of repetitive, grueling labor. His back ached from hours hunched over assembly lines, and his legs felt like lead with every step he took onto the factory floor of the Tesla Gigafactory in Reno, Nevada. But as heavy as his body felt, it was the emotional toll, the stories, the faces, the struggles that weighed on him the most. The rhythmic hum of machines had become a familiar backdrop, a mechanical symphony punctuated by the occasional clang of metal or hiss of hydraulic arms. But beneath that steady beat was something more profound, a pulse, a heartbeat that belonged not to the machines, but to the people who kept them running. It was in their quick glances, their tired smiles, their unspoken frustrations. "Dan, heads up!" a voice shouted, snapping Elon from his thoughts. Instinctively, he lunged forward just in time to catch a heavy aluminum panel that had slipped from its mount. The metal was cold and unforgiving against his palms, but the adrenaline coursing through him dulled the sting. He carefully set the panel back in place, his heart still pounding from the near miss. A young man nearby, Daniel, the same worker who'd offered him a tired smile the day before, gave him a nod of approval. "You're quick," he said, his voice carrying a hint of surprise. "We could use more hands like that." Elon forced a smile, but the moment wasn't lost on him. This wasn't just a close call. It was a symptom of a deeper issue. The factory was running on the edge, its workforce stretched thin, compensating for flaws in the system with sheer grit and determination. And every day, that tension simmered just beneath the surface. In the break room that afternoon, the atmosphere was noticeably heavier. The usual banter and laughter were replaced by hushed conversations and furrowed brows. Elon sat with Daniel and a few other workers, their faces reflecting the fatigue that words couldn't capture. "They keep saying we're part of this big mission," Daniel muttered, gesturing vaguely toward the Tesla logo on the wall. "But it doesn't feel like it. Feels like we're just parts, replaceable." Another worker, a woman with streaks of gray in her hair and years of experience etched into the lines on her face, chimed in. "The worst part? They don't even listen. We've been telling them about that faulty lift for weeks. Do you think anyone upstairs cares?" Elon felt a pang of guilt deep in his chest. He had always believed Tesla was more than just a company. It was a movement of vision for the future. But here, in the heart of its operations, The people who made that vision possible felt invisible. Later that evening, the fragile facade of control shattered once again. Sarah, a diligent worker with a reputation for meticulous attention to detail, was injured when a piece of equipment jammed, sending a sharp metal shard slicing across her forearm. The sudden scream of pain cut through the factory's noise like a blade. Supervisors rushed to her side, their faces masks of concern, but it was the look in Sarah's eyes that haunted Elon. The frustration, the anger. "I told them this thing was acting up," she hissed through gritted teeth as a supervisor bandaged her arm. "No one listens until it's too late." Elon stood frozen, the words echoing in his mind. This wasn't just a technical failure. It was a failure of leadership, a failure to prioritize the very people who made Tesla what it was. As the shift ended, Elon lingered on the factory floor, ostensibly to help clean up, but in truth to think. The problems were clearer than ever, glaring and undeniable. But the solutions? Those felt elusive. How could he fix a system so deeply flawed without disrupting the delicate balance of production? He had come here seeking answers, but all he found were more questions. But just when the weight of the problem seemed insurmountable, Elon began to notice something remarkable, a spark of ingenuity among the workers themselves. By the end of the week, Elon was no longer just the new guy. He was Dan, someone who showed up on time, worked hard, and listened when it mattered. The camaraderie he built with his co-workers allowed him to witness something extraordinary, the resilience and creativity of the people who kept Tesla running, often in spite of the system. One evening, as the last shift prepared to clock out, Elon noticed a small group huddled near a malfunctioning station. The robotic welder, a critical piece of equipment, had been unreliable for weeks. But instead of waiting for a repair team, the workers had taken matters into their own hands. Daniel led the effort, his brow furrowed in concentration as he tinkered with the machine. With a mix of spare parts scavenged from other stations and a hefty dose of creativity, they managed to bypass the welder's faulty circuit board. The machine sputtered back to life, welding seams with the precision it had on its first day. Elon couldn't hide his amazement. "How'd you figure that out?" he asked, genuinely impressed. Daniel shrugged, wiping grease from his hands. "You spend enough time around these machines, you start to see patterns. Management doesn't have time for this stuff, so we figure it out ourselves." Elon nodded, his mind racing. This wasn't just resourcefulness. It was innovation born out of necessity. Over the next few days, he saw more examples. Workers redesigning tools to make their jobs easier, streamlining assembly sequences to save precious seconds, even reprogramming robots to avoid downtime. But the disconnect was glaring. These innovations rarely reach management. Supervisors were too focused on meeting quotas, and workers didn't feel empowered to share their ideas beyond their immediate teams. The turning point came during an informal gathering in the break room. A group of employees had assembled to brainstorm solutions to recurring issues on the line. The conversation was animated, filled with laughter and heated debates, but beneath it all was a clear sense of purpose. "We could probably shave 5 minutes off each shift if we adjusted the conveyor timing," one worker suggested, sketching out an idea on a napkin. "Yeah, but who's going to listen?" another countered, his tone tinged with cynicism. "We've been through this before." Elon cleared his throat, his heart pounding. For the first time since he'd started this undercover journey, he felt compelled to speak. "What if someone did listen?" he asked, his voice steady but carrying an undercurrent of urgency. "What if you had a direct line to the top?" The room fell silent. Workers exchanged skeptical glances, the weight of past disappointments hanging heavy in the air. Daniel, always quick with a quip, gave him a lopsided grin. "That's a nice thought, Dan, but that's not how it works here." Elon didn't argue, but the gears in his mind were already turning. He had seen enough. The workers weren't the problem. They were the solution. All they needed was a voice, a platform. As he lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling of his modest apartment, Elon knew what he had to do. The question wasn't if they would believe him when he revealed his true identity. It was how they would react. And more importantly, what would happen next? The factory's heartbeat was strong, but it needed to be heard. and Elon Musk was ready to make sure it was. The morning meeting at the Tesla Gigafactory in Reno felt like any other. Rows of workers stood shoulder to shoulder, their faces marked by the familiar blend of fatigue and determination. The supervisors rattled off the day's updates, their voices barely rising above the hum of machinery coming to life in the background. But for Elon Musk, still wearing the uniform of Dan, the factory worker, this morning was different. His heart pounded in a way it hadn't in years, not from exhaustion, but from anticipation. As he stood at the back of the room, his mind replayed the conversations, the frustrations, the ingenuity he'd witnessed over the past week. He wasn't here just to observe anymore. It was time to act, time to pull back the curtain. Daniel nudged him, his brow furrowed in curiosity. "You good? Done? You look nervous." Elon forced a small smile, his nerves bubbling beneath the surface. Yet just thinking about something big. When the supervisors finished their announcements, Elon stepped forward, his footsteps echoing in the hushed space. The chatter died down, and heads turned, curious eyes settling on the man they knew only as the quiet, hard-working new guy. He cleared his throat, his voice cutting through the lingering noise. "Before we get to work, I need to say something." A ripple of confusion spread through the room. Workers exchanged puzzled glances. Daniel raised an eyebrow, his arms crossed over his chest. Elon took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on him. "My name isn't Dan." The room froze. A silence thick enough to cut settled over the crowd. You could hear the distant clatter of a wrench dropping somewhere in the background. "What are you talking about?" Daniel asked, his voice a mix of skepticism and disbelief. Elon met his gaze, steady and unwavering. "My name is Elon Musk." His words hung in the air, almost surreal in their simplicity. "I've been working alongside you for the past week to see what life is like on this floor, to understand what you go through, what you face every day." For a moment, there was nothing but stunned silence. Then came the murmurs, the disbelieving laughter. "No way," someone muttered from the back. "This some kind of joke?" But Elon wasn't joking. He removed his safety goggles and straightened his posture, the familiar confidence of a leader returning to his stance. The man who had blended in just days before now stood before them as the CEO of the very company they worked for. "I know this is hard to believe," he continued, his voice steady but filled with raw honesty. "But I needed to see this for myself. Not from reports, not from meetings, but from you. Because you're the ones who make Tesla what it is." The room remained still, the disbelief slowly giving way to a mixture of shock, curiosity, and for some, hope. Daniel's expression softened, the pieces falling into place in his mind. "Wait, you're serious? You're actually him?" Elon nodded. "Yes, and I've learned more in the past week than I have in years. I've seen the challenges you face, broken equipment, unrealistic expectations, a system that doesn't always value your input. But I've also seen your ingenuity, your resilience, and your ability to solve problems in ways no one else could." A hand shot up from the back of the room. "Like what? What's going to change?" A woman called out, her voice carrying the weariness of someone who'd heard empty promises before. Elon didn't hesitate. "For starters, we're going to create a direct line of communication between the factory floor and the leadership team. Your ideas, your concerns, they need to be heard. And we'll fix the equipment issues you've been dealing with. No more shortcuts." The room buzzed with cautious murmurs, the skepticism still lingering but beginning to crack under the weight of genuine possibility. Daniel stepped forward, his trademark smirk replaced by something more sincere. "You really mean it?" he asked, his voice quieter now, tinged with hope. "I do," Elon replied, his gaze sweeping across the room. "But I can't do it alone. I need your help to make this place as innovative and efficient as we all know it can be." The room erupted into applause, not the polite, obligatory kind reserved for corporate speeches, but genuine, heartfelt applause. For the first time, many of these workers felt seen, their voices acknowledged by the very person at the top. But Elon knew this was just the beginning. The real work, the hard work, was turning those promises into action, proving that leadership wasn't about standing above others, but standing alongside them. As the applause faded and the workers filed out to start their shifts, Daniel lingered for a moment, his eyes still fixed on Elon. "You know," he said, his voice softer now, "I never thought I'd see the day when the boss would be down here, getting his hands dirty with the rest of us." Elon chuckled, the tension in his chest easing slightly. "Neither did I," he admitted. "But I'm glad I did." As they walked back to the assembly line, side by side, Elon felt something shift within him. The past week had opened his eyes to the true heartbeat of Tesla, the people. And now, it was time to make sure that heartbeat was never ignored again. The days that followed Elon Musk's shocking reveal were nothing short of transformative. The factory buzzed with a different kind of energy, one tinged with cautious optimism and a sense of curiosity that hadn't existed before. The man they had known as Dan, the quiet new guy who had struggled with bolts on his first day, was now the CEO of Tesla. But what truly surprised everyone wasn't just that he had been among them. It was that he stayed. Elon didn't retreat to his office after making promises. He didn't disappear into conference rooms or let his words fade into another corporate speech lost in the hum of daily production. He stayed on the factory floor, walking the same lines, listening to the same stories, and most importantly, taking immediate action. The first order of business was tackling the glaring safety issues that had haunted the factory for months, maybe even years. The malfunctioning lift that had injured Sarah was repaired within 24 hours of Elon's announcement. Not just patched up, but fully overhauled. For the first time in a long while, workers watched as a problem they complained about was addressed swiftly and thoroughly. But Elon didn't stop there. He deployed a team of safety auditors across the entire gigafactory, tasking them with identifying every hazard, no matter how small. The team wasn't made up of just managers and engineers. It included factory workers themselves, people like Daniel and Sarah who knew the machines better than anyone else. Their insights were invaluable, and their participation sent a clear message: your voice matters. In the break room, once a space filled with quiet grumblings and shrugged-off frustrations, a new atmosphere began to take shape. Workers gathered not just to vent, but to brainstorm. There was a spark, a sense of possibility, as they realized they weren't just gears in the machine. They were the ones shaping its future. Elon introduced what he called the Open Innovation Forum, a simple yet revolutionary system where workers could submit ideas directly to the leadership team. No red tape, no middlemen, just pure, unfiltered innovation from the people who knew the factory inside and out. The response was overwhelming. Within days, submissions flooded in. Daniel's suggestion to adjust the conveyor belt timing, an idea he'd casually mentioned in the break room weeks before, was one of the first to be implemented. The adjustment shaved precious minutes off each shift, improving efficiency without increasing strain on the workers. Sarah, still recovering from her injury, but more determined than ever, proposed a redesign for a cumbersome tool used on the assembly line. Her new design reduced worker strain significantly and boosted overall productivity. It was a small change, but the impact was immediate and profound. As more ideas took shape and were swiftly acted upon, something incredible began to happen. Morale on the factory floor shifted. The workers, who once felt like replaceable parts in a vast machine, now saw themselves as vital contributors to Tesla's mission. The pride in their work was palpable, and it wasn't just about hitting quotas anymore. It was about being part of something bigger, something meaningful. One afternoon, while walking the floor, Elon found himself alongside James, the same supervisor who had barked at him on his first day. There was a tension between them, but it wasn't the same as before. It was the weight of mutual respect, born from shared experience. "Never thought I'd see the day," James muttered, tightening a bolt on a nearby chassis. "The boss man, down here in the trenches fixing problems with us." Elon chuckled softly. "Neither did I." He paused, watching the line move with a smoother rhythm than it had a week ago. "But I've learned more here than I ever did in a boardroom." James glanced at him, his expression thoughtful. "Well, I'll say this. You've surprised us. But talk's easy. Let's see if you stick to it." Elon met his gaze, unwavering. I will, but I need your help to keep me accountable. It wasn't just words. Elon meant it. He knew that real change didn't come from the top down. It came from every level, especially from those closest to the work. And for the first time, the people on the floor believed him. The changes in the factory didn't go unnoticed by the rest of Tesla. News of Elon's undercover mission spread through the company like wildfire. At the next company-wide meeting, Elon spoke openly about his time on the factory floor. He didn't sugarcoat it. He shared the hard truths, the frustrations he'd seen, and the remarkable ingenuity of the workers who kept Tesla running day in and day out. One week on the factory floor taught me more about leadership than years in the boardroom. He told the audience of executives, engineers, and stakeholders. Innovation doesn't just come from the top. It comes from every level, especially from those closest to the work. Our job as leaders isn't just a guide. It's to listen, to empower, and to adapt. The message resonated far beyond Tesla. Other companies began rethinking their approach to leadership, inspired by the story of the CEO who traded his suit for a factory uniform and found the soul of his company in the process. Back in the factory, things continued to evolve. The Open Innovation Forum became a permanent fixture, and the culture of listening and collaboration grew stronger with each passing day. Workers who had once resigned themselves to dangerous conditions and ignored ideas now felt empowered to speak up, to innovate, and to take pride in their contributions. For Elon, the experience left a profound mark. The man who had built Tesla into a beacon of innovation realized that true progress wasn't just about technology, it was about people. It was about recognizing the value in every individual, from the engineers designing the next breakthrough to the workers tightening bolts on the assembly line. As he stood on the factory floor one evening, watching the sun dip below the Nevada horizon, Elon felt a sense of fulfillment he hadn't known he was missing. Tesla wasn't just his company, it was their company. And together, they were building something far greater than cars. They were building a future. And it all started with listening. The transformation at the Tesla Gigafactory in Reno didn't just stay confined within the factory's towering walls. As word of Elon Musk's undercover mission spread beyond Nevada, it rippled through every corner of the company, and eventually far beyond Tesla itself. Inside the factory, the shift was undeniable. What had once been an environment heavy with exhaustion and silent frustration was now alive with a sense of purpose and collaboration. The workers weren't just punching in and out of shifts anymore. They were part of something bigger, something that for the first time in a long while felt like theirs. Elon hadn't just listened to their frustrations, he'd acted on them. But even more importantly, he had stayed. Day after day, long after the initial reveal, he remained a presence on the factory floor. Not as a CEO barking orders, but as a leader standing shoulder to shoulder with the people who made his vision possible. One chilly morning, as the Nevada sun cast long shadows across the assembly line, Daniel found Elon inspecting one of the robotic arms that had caused so much trouble during his undercover days. Daniel leaned against a nearby workbench, arms crossed, watching with a bemused smile. "You know," Daniel said, breaking the quiet hum of the machines, "I still can't believe you stuck around." Elon glanced up, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I told you I wasn't going anywhere." Daniel chuckled, shaking his head. "Yeah, but people like you, CEOs, they don't usually hang out in places like this. They make promises, sure, but then it's back to the boardroom." Elon straightened up, wiping grease from his hands. "Maybe that's the problem," he said thoughtfully. "You can't lead from a distance." "Not really. You got to see it, feel it, live it." Daniel's smile softened. "Well, you sure got a taste of it, that's for sure." As the weeks went on, the Open Innovation Forum continued to flourish. What began as a simple idea-sharing platform became a cornerstone of Tesla's operations. Workers from all levels contributed, and their suggestions weren't just acknowledged, they were implemented. One of the most significant changes came from Sarah, whose injury had once symbolized the factory's neglect. Now her ideas were shaping its future. She proposed a complete overhaul of the assembly line layout, designed to reduce worker strain and improve efficiency. It wasn't just about making the process faster. It was about making it safer and more sustainable for the people who operated it every day. When the new layout was rolled out, Elon made sure Sarah was there front and center to see the impact of her contribution. Standing beside her as the first vehicle moved smoothly through the revised line, he turned to her with genuine gratitude. "This wouldn't have happened without you," he said quietly. Sarah, usually stoic, felt her throat tighten. I never thought anyone would actually listen," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Elon nodded, his gaze steady. "That's the past. From now on, we listen." But the changes at Tesla didn't stop at the factory floor. Inspired by the success in Reno, Elon implemented similar programs across other Tesla facilities. The lessons he learned weren't confined to a single factory. They became the foundation for a new way of leading. And the impact wasn't limited to Tesla alone. Other companies began to take notice. Stories of Elon's undercover experience and the resulting transformation spread through business circles and media outlets alike. Articles were written, interviews were requested, and soon, CEOs from different industries started questioning their own leadership practices. At a leadership conference in San Francisco, Elon stood before a room full of executives, his usual polished presentation style replaced with something raw and heartfelt. He didn't talk about quarterly profits or the latest advancements in electric vehicles. Instead, he spoke about the people on the factory floor, their stories, their struggles, and their brilliance. "Innovation doesn't come from the top," he told the crowd. "It comes from the people closest to the work. The people who show up every day, who face the challenges head on. If you want to lead, really lead, you need to walk in their shoes. You need to listen. Because without them, there is no company." The room was silent, the weight of his words sinking in. For many in that room, it was a wake-up call. Leadership wasn't about titles or corner offices. It was about connection, about understanding the human element behind every product, every service. Back in Reno, the factory continued to thrive. The workers who had once felt invisible now stood tall, their contributions woven into the very fabric of Tesla's success. There was a new sense of pride in their work, not just because the company was succeeding, but because they were part of that success in a tangible, meaningful way. One evening, as the factory lights dimmed and the last shift prepared to clock out, Elon stood by the exit, watching as the workers filed out. Daniel spotted him and walked over, hands shoved into his pockets. "You know," Daniel began, his voice thoughtful, "I've been here a long time, seen a lot of people come and go, but I've never seen anything like this." Elon raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" Daniel gestured around the factory, then to the workers heading home with lighter steps and brighter eyes. "Hope," he said simply. "You gave us hope." Elon felt a lump rise in his throat, unexpected but welcome. "You gave it to yourselves," he replied quietly. "I just finally started listening." As the night settled over the Nevada desert, Elon walked out of the factory, his heart full. Tesla wasn't just a company of cutting-edge technology and ambitious goals. It was a company built by people, real people with real stories, whose voices now echoed in every innovation, every success. And for Elon Musk, that was the greatest achievement of all. Months after Elon Musk first stepped onto the Tesla Gigafactory floor in Reno as Dan, the echoes of that experience still reverberated throughout the company. But it wasn't just the structural changes, the safety overhauls, or the streamlined processes that marked the difference. It was something deeper, an invisible shift that had taken root in the hearts of the people who kept the company moving. The workers no longer trudged into the factory as mere cogs in a vast machine. They arrived as innovators, problem solvers, and collaborators. The Open Innovation Forum had become more than just a suggestion box. It was the beating heart of Tesla's evolution, and its impact reached far beyond the walls of the factory. One crisp autumn morning, Elon returned to Reno. This time, he wasn't undercover. His face was known, his presence familiar, but the humility he'd discovered in those weeks undercover had never left him. Walking through the factory doors, he felt a quiet sense of pride, not in himself, but in the people who had transformed Tesla from the inside out. James spotted him first, leaning against a stack of crates near the assembly line, his arms crossed in his usual no-nonsense way. But the hardened skepticism that had once marked his expression had softened over time. "Look who decided to drop by," James called out, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Thought you'd gone back to your ivory tower." Elon chuckled, shaking his head. "You should know better by now, James. I'm not going anywhere." James laughed, a sound that resonated differently now, less guarded, more genuine. "Well, good. We got plenty more for you to see." As they walked together along the factory floor, Elon noticed the subtle, yet profound changes. The machines hummed with familiar precision, but the atmosphere among the workers was lighter, more collaborative. Conversations buzzed with ideas, not complaints. Teams gathered around workstations, sharing solutions and improvements as naturally as breathing. They stopped near one of the revamped robotic stations, where Daniel was hunched over a control panel, fine-tuning a newly installed system. When he saw Elon, his face lit up with a grin that spoke volumes. "Back for more punishment?" Daniel teased, wiping his hands on a grease-streaked rag. Elon laughed, the sound easy and warm. "Just here to see how you're keeping me on my toes." Daniel straightened, his eyes glinting with pride. "Well, you've got your work cut out for you. We've been busy." He gestured toward the newly reprogrammed robotic arm, which moved with a fluidity and precision that hadn't existed before. "This was Sarah's idea," Daniel continued, his tone shifting to something more reverent. "She figured out how to optimize the arm's movements, cut down on wear and tear. Pretty impressive, huh?" Elon nodded, his chest swelling with pride, not just for the innovation itself, but for what it represented. "It's more than impressive. It's exactly what Tesla should be about." They moved on, each step reaffirming what Elon had come to understand. The true power of Tesla wasn't in its cutting-edge technology or sleek designs. It was in the people, their creativity, their resilience, their unyielding commitment to making things better. Later that day, Elon gathered with the workers in the break room. The space now transformed from a place of quiet frustration to one of vibrant discussion and camaraderie. The walls, once bare and sterile, were now adorned with photos of team projects, handwritten notes of appreciation, and even sketches of new ideas in the works. Standing before them, Elon felt a familiar mix of nerves and gratitude. But this time, he wasn't here to reveal a hidden identity or make promises. He was here to celebrate. "When I first came here," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "I thought I understood what made Tesla special. I thought it was about innovation, about pushing boundaries and creating something new. But I was wrong." He paused, letting his words sink in, his gaze sweeping across the room, filled with faces that had become more than just employees. They were his partners in this journey. What makes Tesla special isn't just the technology. It's you. The people who show up every day, who face the challenges head-on, who bring ideas to life and make this company what it is. You're not just workers. You're the heart and soul of Tesla. A hush fell over the room, the weight of his words settling into the hearts of everyone present. "And because of you," Elon continued, his voice softening, "Tesla isn't just a company. It's a community, a place where every voice matters, where every idea has the power to change the world." The room erupted into applause, the sound echoing off the walls like a heartbeat, steady and strong. It wasn't just for Elon. It was for themselves, for the journey they'd taken together, and for the future they were building as one. As the applause died down, Daniel stepped forward, his usual easy grin replaced with something more heartfelt. "You know, Elon," he said, his voice carrying the weight of their shared experience, "when you first showed up here, I thought you were just another suit trying to tell us how to do our jobs. But you proved us wrong. You listened. You learned. And you showed us that leadership isn't about standing above. It's about standing with." Elon felt a lump rise in his throat, his heart full in a way that no financial success or product launch had ever made him feel. "Thank you," he replied simply, his voice thick with emotion. "But this is just the beginning. There's so much more we can do, together." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the factory floor, Elon stood among his team, No longer just the CEO of Tesla, but a part of its beating heart. And in that moment, he knew this was the true measure of success. Not in profits or production numbers, but in the people who made it all possible. And with them by his side, the future was brighter than ever. What if the most powerful leaders stepped into the shoes of everyday workers? That's exactly what happened when Elon Musk, CEO of Tesla, traded his executive suite for the factory floor. This story isn't just about one man or one company. It's a reflection of something much bigger: the power of empathy, listening, and true leadership. Through Elon's undercover journey, we saw how innovation isn't confined to boardrooms or corporate strategies. It thrives in the hands of the people who build, create, and problem-solve every single day. His experience reminds us that real change starts when leaders step down from their pedestals and stand alongside their teams. But here's the big question: what happens next? Will Tesla's transformation last? Can Elon's leadership style inspire other CEOs to follow his example? Or will the pressures of the corporate world pull things back to the old ways? And what about the workers? Daniel, Sarah, James, how will their roles evolve in this new chapter? We want to hear from you. What did this story mean to you? Do you believe leaders today are willing to take similar steps? Or was this a rare exception? Share your thoughts in the comments below. How do you think the story will continue? Could Elon's approach spark a global shift in leadership? Or will it be a fleeting moment in time? If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Let's spread this message far and wide, because maybe, just maybe, it's stories like this that remind us of the power we all have to make a difference.